Hello. Well, today is a very, very special day, and I am so excited to bring a special topic with one of the most amazing technologists that I know, Mihaela Mazzenga. Thank you so much for being here for round two. I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thank you for having me again, Cheryl. I'm always happy to discuss anything with you.
Yeah, well, hopefully I'll make it, you won't regret saying that. No, but I'm just kidding. There's been a lot going on in your world recently, and one of the most there's two reasons why I wanted to follow up interview. One is I admire you so much, and I always get a lot out of speaking with you. And then also, I think you have a lot to share with female leaders, emerging leaders, and also male allies because you are, really now safe to say, renowned expert in your field. And as we were talking about before we went live, it's no surprise that technology is rapidly changing the world. And so it's really important that decisions are made. They're made quickly, they're made with integrity, and that all voices matter and that they're heard. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this topic. But before we jump in, I also wanted to offer a congratulations for your invitation to the Forbes Technology Council. Can you let me know a little bit about what that means, the impact that that's going to have, and were you surprised, expecting it? Tell us a little bit more about that.
No, I wasn't expecting it. Actually, don't know much about how they source everybody that they invite, but it's really all about putting a voice on your experience and being able to co-create content to educate the world about topics that you care about, to be able to publish content on your own for things that are close to your heart and that you're an expert on, and they're really able to harness knowledge around the world instead of being very concentrated in a set number of writers or journalists.
Yeah, so that's fantastic. Well, congratulations again. I can't wait to see all of the can't think of the word, but the really cutting edge information that's going to be coming from you. So let's go ahead without further ado, just jump right in, because I think it's safe to say that all of us, or people watching, well, me included, has had maybe some times when we've held back when we knew that we should speak up, or we held back a little bit when we knew our gut and our heart was telling us to make a decision, but maybe we waited, maybe we went a different way, maybe we went against what our gut and our heart was saying, or we just delayed the timeline. So I'm wondering if you can shine a little light on whether it's an important small decision or important big decision. Can you share a little bit of your knowledge that you've gained over the years and how to really make decisions, important decisions that matter, and make them quickly, but also make them carefully?
So I think for me, it's really the carefully that speaks to me most. I'm an individual that will really get something in my head, and I know personally that it's the right decision when I can't get it out of my head. I literally won't be able to stop thinking about it. And so it's more than my gut, right? It's also my mind telling me. And if I don't act on it, then I will literally probably drive myself insane. But the point to that is, I think it's really incremental, the way that you need to approach big decisions. And it's also very personal. So this approach might not work for everybody else. This is just how it works for me. And I like to focus on the pros and cons. It's really simple. But on top of that, I think I've always had a guiding light. I set goals for myself really, really long time ago. So I've known exactly where I want to go. I just didn't know how I would get there and what would transpire in my journey to get there. But I always go back to that place and I ask myself whether or not this part of this decision will get me closer to my heart, to my goals, and ultimately where I stated that I wanted Myself, to land 5, 10, even 20 years ago, it's always been very clear what I wanted to achieve. So I think within you, right, everyone has that guiding light. So it's not necessarily just your gut. You also have to think about yourself as well in the future, and how this choice will enable you to get there faster, slower. I mean, the amount of time that it takes, I don't think matters, as long as you're satisfied with the decision that you ultimately made. It's a positive change for your life. And I think everybody approaches it differently, but I think it's very cliche, but true for us to always say, to go with your gut and to lead with your heart. And right, technologists may be a little bit more black and white than that, but I think that inside, everybody knows what the right decision truly is. They might have that little voice inside their head, like I do as well, that continuously tells them, but it's not always easy to make that decision, and that's what holds people back. It's the what ifs, and it's the hardship that comes with making the hard decisions. I think that truly holds people back from making the right ones, because that's not always the easy path either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really want to point out something that you said that's so important. And I've seen it over and over, whether, working, with some of the, top female leaders in the country, or working with Olympians. What you've said, I've seen them exemplify it over and over. And it's really amazing that that is innate to you. You did not learn it from me or anyone else. Well, you probably learned it from someone, but a really long time ago. And that is, it's just a different perspective. And I just want to reiterate what you said and make sure that people really got it, because most people think of themselves where they are at a certain period of time. And they think, I want to get over there. They might think, I want to be, someday I would like to be a chief technology officer, or someday I would like to be a senior vice president, technology strategy. And they think, gosh, I'm here, and that journey over there is so far away. But what you shared, and what I've seen in so many world-class performers, is that they flip that kind of on its rear end. So in other words, like, I am a chief technology officer. I am a senior vice president technology strategy. Now let's work it backwards and figure out, how did we make that happen? And so just that shift in perspective can really be a great confidence boost, and also help you really see and believe and give yourself permission and stay on that path. But some people might say, well, it's great that you have that voice in your head, but sometimes everything's confusing, and maybe they're not as locked into their purpose or that voice. Or so what would you say to them if they know that maybe they need to make a big decision, but they're not really hearing that guiding voice?
I think the best thing that you can do is start to practice locking yourself into not maybe a decision, but a goal. Mm-hmm. It has to be very intentful if we're talking about big decisions that are going to affect you personally. So there is no greater cause than for you to care about yourself. And I think if you start now, to make a clear-cut goal with very clear intent, whether that's big or small, and just try to stick to it. And it's not going to be perfect. And again, I know that that's not easy for everybody, and a lot of people certainly need coaching to get there. Personally, I even know a lot of people that do operate that way, that it is very hard, and they spin a lot until ultimately a decision is made. But when you break it down to if you've already made the decision and now you're maybe retracing your thoughts, reconsidering what you've already decided, and ultimately you went down a certain path for a reason. And the biggest mistake you can make is not deciding at all. Mm-hmm. So I like to always move forward. And if you don't make a decision, recognize then that you won't move forward. And if moving forward is important to you, then you have to set that clear intent from the beginning. Even if the intent is, okay, this time around, I'm going to give myself, 2 days to make this decision. I'm going to lay out all the pros and cons. I'm going to think about everything I need to think about, and I'm giving myself 2 days to make it, and at least make that a goal. But you have to start somewhere. So I don't think that we can expect things to change. I don't think that the way we make decisions, if those things are hard for us, you have to recognize that about yourself. And if you don't do anything to change it the next time around, then the outcome won't be any different either. You're going to have just as much of a hard time the next time around as well. So it's about the intentful changes that you can make in your life to have an impact the next time around. You need to, face a different challenge.
Yeah, that's so. And I want to bring up, reiterate a very important word that you brought up, and the word is decide. Two things to think about that you said that were so important that I want to make sure everyone gets is one, to be an observer of something rather than being in the middle of it. So in other words, if a big decision's coming, or if something's not feeling quite right, like I notice that this isn't feeling quite right, rather than this isn't right, I am not happy. Because with creating that distance, it kind of gives you a little bit different perspective. But then the word decide actually phonetically means death of. So I always say it means death of any other option. So in other words, if you're coming up on a big decision, a lot of times we have more control than we think. We just have to decide the next step, or decide what we want the outcome to be, and gain clarity around that. So that what you brought up was incredibly important. Now, let's say, we've also talked, and there's a big important push now, and we talked about that it's not quick enough, of course, but for women's voices to be heard, valued, recognized in the workplace, and not just women's voices, but also those who are further marginalized within our gender. And so is when it comes to making big decisions, I think this also encompasses making big decisions about, how we can implement change in the workplace, and, helping others to make big decisions too. So taking kind of a different look at it, is there any advice that you would have in helping others? You had mentioned that we all have, and I'm a huge proponent of this as well, is that we all have something very special placed within us. And then when we're working to that means, we tend to feel energetic. We tend to feel really lit up, and so can you offer any advice on helping others to make big decisions, and maybe pull the trigger on something that they're holding back, but their unique area of genius is trying to push through? So can you share a little bit about how to empower each other?
So teamwork is pretty massive, and I think in terms of leadership and teamwork, I've always put myself in a position to advocate for others. And that's not just other women, right? It's anybody that I see maybe trying to make a change, or level up in their careers in some capacity. And we also have to recognize that it's not just about inclusion. We need to do a really good job internally, at all levels of leadership, to make sure that we support and enable and advocate and become allies to others within the organization. Because if we don't, and if we're only including to check a box, that's an incredibly selfish way to go about it. But for me, this is really at its core being properly mentored by real leaders previously in your career. I think if you haven't had that before, it's probably very hard for you to use your voice to enable and help others. And I think that's It's really critical, and I recognize that it is a hard change within some cultures to be able to do that. So I think every one of us has to ask ourselves every day whether we're okay always just speaking for ourselves, and you might be, and that's a decision, a private decision that you need to live with on your own, or whether you will be and can be somebody that can speak up and advocate for others. Absolutely, I feel that in the ranks of leadership, that is a requirement. And if that isn't happening within leadership at any organization, then that's a shame, right? Because our purpose as leaders within teams, and operating under true teamwork and transparency and collaboration, requires enabling the voices of others, and sometimes even speaking for them when they can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such an important point. I'm so glad that you brought that up. And one of the biggest indicators of people being able to make big decisions, especially when there's a lot at stake, is feeling safe. And so when it comes to creating that safety for ourselves or helping to create it for others, do you have maybe one thing that how we can first take personal responsibility to create that safety for ourselves, so we can really feel safe enough to make those decisions, and maybe how we can start to create one way we can create safety for others so that we can hear their voice, but also really too, like selfishly, it's great for other people, but like selfishly, we want to also tap into their unique area of genius, because at the end of the day, how amazing would it be if everyone was performing at their highest God-given ability? So it's not just for the other, it's for us as well. So I think once everybody starts to understand that, it might be a little easier and move a little quicker. But on this topic of safety, can you recommend one way that we can kind of create safety for ourselves and for others so we can really make those big decisions when there's a lot at stake?
So, safety, I think, is a tricky word, especially because I think I'm somebody who can handle a lot of risk. But if you don't feel safe or comfortable making a decision within your organization, then you may want to reconsider your place or your space within that organization. In terms of providing safety for others, it doesn't necessarily have to be openly pushing somebody in a direction that they may not be comfortable, right? You can certainly create allyship and private relationships with others in the workplace, and enable them kind of one-on-one, right, in a coaching or mentorship capacity that allows them to push themselves in the capacity that they are comfortable with. But I think for yourself, and looking at safety for yourself, that's probably going to boil down to how much risk, how much transparency and assertion you are personally comfortable with. I think that's going to be very different for different people. Kind of like making that decision, right? So are you making a decision to speak up somewhere where you might not be comfortable, and certainly others within the organization might be comfortable in that same situation. So you have to weigh what the cons are going to be there if we're truly talking about safety and speaking up. And hopefully it's within an organization that is accepting of diverse viewpoints and diverse voices, and will at least hear you. Whether or not there's action after that, will at least hear you. But I think that's going to be very, very case specific and individual and company specific.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I agree 100%. And so, I think I asked you this question back earlier in the year when we spoke, but a lot has transpired since then. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you again. If you were having a conversation with your younger self, meaning yourself that maybe was just getting into the field of technology, what advice would you have for her?
I think I remember you asking me this, and I don't know that I will answer it any differently. I am not somebody who dwells on the past at all. So after I make a decision, I don't really think about it again. It's, water on the bridge, completely out of my mind at that point. And I don't think that I would be who I am today if I hadn't made the decisions and had the experiences that I've had in the past. So I don't know that I would have any meaningful recommendations to myself, especially within the world of tech, because there are a lot of things that are outside of my control. And if I could offer any advice, it would actually be to the mothers and fathers out there to say, interest in technology starts at home, especially for our daughters. And if we don't expose them to things that are not categorically female in childhood, then they're likely not going to be encouraged to go into technology. And I think that women operate much differently than men do. And it's absolute necessity that we get more women into technology to provide, different value. It's not that it's more or less, but that it's different value than has been provided up until this point. And that starts at home. So luckily, I did grow up being encouraged to pursue engineering just in general. And ultimately that led me to technology. But I know that that's not the case. And we bring a lot of bias to our children in terms of our expectations of them in the world.
Yes. So what I gathered from that, it's so important to think about what we expose kids to, probably from a very young age, and also how we speak to them, of course. And then also sounds like too, you might not have given your younger self any different advice, but you would have maybe given her a pat on the back and said, good job. You just need to make decisions and keep looking forward and don't look back.
Yes. I think we touched on this last time. I was a massive introvert. I mean, you couldn't even send me inside of a store to buy anything by myself. So I'd like to say that I would give myself the advice to not be as anxious and maybe be less of an introvert. But there's no way that I could have changed that at that point, right? That is just something for me that changed over time.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think it's safe to say now, with all of the things that you're doing, that you have definitely gotten over that shyness of not wanting to buy something in a store, because you are really having an incredible impact, not just at Valtech, but for technology in general. And you're an inspiration to many, I'm sure. It's been such a pleasure to have a conversation with you again. I look forward to following you. Congratulations again on the Forbes Technology Council. And I'm really excited to keep following you and seeing what's next.
Thank you again so much, Cheryl, for having me on. And, hopefully we'll have another touch base soon.
Yep. Thanks again.